Hey, it's that Deadeye guy. With the year coming to a close, I wanted to take a look ahead at some of the games I'm looking forward to in 2018. It's always dicey business anticipating PC launch dates a year or so out, but most of the games here are either confirmed or have a high probability of a 2018 release. Let's get started. So, I've kind of fallen off the love wagon with Telltale. They do a pretty good job telling stories, but calling their titles games is, well, dubious at best. None of your actions mean much, and the only real gameplay is usually QuickTime events or moving your character around from plot point to plot point. Your effect on the actual story is non-existent, though they give you the illusion of believing that the player has the ability to affect the plot. After playing through their Game of Thrones series, I pretty much gave up on all of their titles unless they make some serious changes to give players more say in what actually happens in the tale being told. The Wolf Among Us Season 2, however, is a series that I will most certainly be picking up when it comes out. The game is unique enough to set itself apart from other Telltale games. The style looks like it's pulled right out of the Fables comic book that it is based on. There is a certain intrigue that comes along with the old school noir fiction, but with the additional spin of having fairy tale characters ranging from Snow White to Beowulf's Grendel. Following Bigby as the Fabletown sheriff is extremely entertaining, and though I know I'm more watching a television series than playing a video game, the plot and characters are enough to keep me invested and forget about the gameplay shortcomings that usually come along with Telltale titles. You can usually get the first season on sale for a really good price, and I'd recommend it for anyone who enjoys a good story of crime and intrigue. MechWarrior hasn't had a real single-player release in over a decade. MechWarrior Online came out back in 2013, pushing a free-to-play model and focusing on online battle arena playstyle. With how much technology has advanced since the release of MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries in 2002, it sort of baffles the mind how this series went this long without another true single-player sequel. That all changed at the tail end of 2016, when Piranha Games announced that MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries was being developed. I'm excited for this title for a couple of reasons. I think historically the MechWarrior games have done a great job of meshing arcade-style gameplay with true battle mech simulation. Lean too far towards one or the other, and you either get a game that is far too action-focused and feels like Titanfall, or you get a game that requires far too much time investment in learning all of the bells and whistles of operating a battle mech, turning off players who aren't that into real simulation. On top of that, the things that developers can do with graphics engines nowadays is truly amazing. My fond memories of the boxy, polygonal mechs from MechWarrior 2 were absolutely shattered by the announcement trailer. This game could be absolutely great, and will hopefully remind folks why the single-player games created such a huge fan base in the first place. Like most boys who grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s, I absolutely loved Dragon Ball Z. I could never have imagined that games would come out that look as stunning as titles like the Budokai series or Xenoverse 1 and 2. A DBZ game that has piqued a lot of interest is FighterZ, and for good reason. FighterZ has a more traditional 2D fighting style, more akin to a Street Fighter. It will not utilize wide open spaces and three-dimensional movement and attacks that have become standard for almost all DBZ fighting games. This isn't the first time Dragon Ball Z has gone to a traditional style. Hyperdimension for the Super Famicom is probably the most famous DBZ game of that era. While it was far slower than we would expect from the genre today, it demonstrates that this isn't really new territory for the franchise. After watching some gameplay footage, it feels like FighterZ will be very similar to the old Marvel vs. Capcom games, but much faster paced and with a DBZ spin. I'm admittedly pretty terrible at fighting games, but I unfortunately love playing them. As a very casual fan of the genre, a title has to grab me with graphics and a lot of cool things available for me to execute with different fighters. Visually, FighterZ looks absolutely fantastic, and from what we've already seen, there's going to be a multitude of awesome moves that you can do within the game. I'll be getting my slow hands on this title when it releases shortly after the new year. Koji Igarashi was the mind behind a good portion of the Castlevania series, and he took to Kickstarter to request funding for his new title in quite possibly the most Japanese way possible. I'm a huge fan of the Metroidvania style, especially when they have dark and gothic themes like the old school Castlevania games. I even backed Blasphemous, which looks to be far more gruesome than what we've seen so far from this genre. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night looks to be the spiritual sequel to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Of course, Konami still owns the rights to Castlevania, so Koji had to make some slight alterations in how the game is titled and marketed. Looking at gameplay, however, you'd have to be blind not to see the very clear theme and stylistic similarities. What is very interesting is how it compares in tone from the aforementioned Blasphemous. The latter is being developed in the West, and is extremely dark, violent, and hopeless. Bloodstained looks much more cartoonish and stylized. You can tell after a few seconds that it is a Japanese game. There's a feeling that the genre doesn't really have any more cards to play, and while Metroidvania games are enjoyable, it's rare that you encounter a mechanic that you haven't seen before. If anyone could drop some innovation into the genre, it'll be the man behind some of its most beloved titles. I'll be looking forward to comparing these two games in the future. Blasphemous looks like it's still quite a ways from release, but Bloodstained will hit the market in just a few months. I'm honestly a bit shocked that a game like Kingdom Come: Deliverance hasn't been released yet. There have been medieval simulators, the most notable of which would probably be Mount & Blade, but none with the scale and availability of choices that Kingdom Come will have. The developer is looking to create an experience that is true to the life of a European in the 1400s, and from all accounts, they're going to be pretty successful with it. Warhorse Studios is touting realism as one of the primary gameplay features, with the player being able to navigate the storyline in multiple ways that would be true to what it was like in the Middle Ages. Creating a window in time is going to be a huge draw for history nerds and fantasy geeks alike. I have some questions regarding the actual mechanics of NPCs and combat. Some of the gameplay trailers Warhorse has published demonstrates some fairly janky fighting mechanics as well as some strange interactions with the inhabitants of the world. They have emphasized that all of the weapons are going to be true to real physics and will react to different armors and materials appropriately. Slashing at plate armor with a sword will do minimal damage. Smashing it with a mace or a flail, however, will be devastating. It is very difficult to create an entertaining and accurate melee combat system in the first person, and my hat is off to them for giving it a real shot in Kingdom Come. I just have to see this system in action and get a feel for it before I jump to too many conclusions. I have high hopes for Kingdom Come: Deliverance. We've seen some powerhouse titles come out of Europe in recent years, and I'd love to be able to add a highly polished, enjoyable, and historically accurate medieval simulator to that list. 2018 doesn't seem to have a whole lot of confirmed high-profile PC releases, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be a big year for these titles and some of the ones I left off the list. Like most PC gamers, I have a fairly hefty backlog of titles that I really need to go back and finish. Perhaps 2018 will be the year of the rewinds. Thanks for watching. If you like content like this, why not like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.